Have you ever had this happen? You're talking to someone you genuinely care about. You spend 10 minutes crafting the perfect message. You choose every word carefully. You make it thoughtful, clever, warm. Then you hit send. And suddenly, the conversation dies. It ends right there, at the end of that one sentence. Meanwhile, you're still standing there with your phone in your hand, continuing the conversation in your mind. You replay what you wrote. You imagine what they might have meant. You wonder why they didn't continue. And from the outside, it looks as though their life simply moved on as normal. That is when the questions begin. Did I say something wrong? Did something I said push them away? Or was it something I didn't say? Did they lose interest in me? But what if the issue was never that you said the wrong thing? What if the real problem was that you gave their mind an easy ending? Because the human mind is remarkably efficient at putting completed things away. When something feels resolved, clear, and finished, the brain closes the file. And once the file is closed, it often stops returning to it. Today, I want to show you a psychological principle that can change the way you look at conversations, attraction, and human connection. This is not about pretending to be mysterious. It is not about flooding someone with romantic words. And it is not about becoming better at flirting through manipulation. It is about understanding why certain people stay in our minds for days, sometimes for no clear logical reason at all. Write clarity in the comments if this already makes sense to you. Maybe you have tried everything before now. You wrote long messages, hoping they would understand how much you cared. Then you tried shorter messages, hoping you would seem less available. You waited for them to make the first move. You forced yourself not to text for days because you didn't want to look desperate. And still, none of it created the steady, consistent connection you wanted. That does not mean there is something wrong with you. It does not mean you are lacking as a woman, or that you are incapable of being loved. More often, it means no one ever explained to you how attention and memory actually work. Your mind and their mind do not stay focused on things that feel fully solved. The brain tends to keep returning to what is unfinished, unclear, unresolved, or missing a final conclusion. Think about television in Turkey. You can watch a series finale where everything is wrapped up beautifully. The conflict is resolved, everyone gets their happy ending, and a week later you may barely remember the show. But then there are those season finales where the main character is shot, the truth is about to be revealed, and the screen suddenly goes black. You spend the entire summer thinking about it. Who did it? What happens next? Did that character survive? The story stays alive because it did not give your mind closure. Relationships do not operate as differently from this as people like to believe. When a conversation with you feels complete, neat, and fully concluded, the other person's brain can file it away. But when a conversation ends with something sincere still unexplored, something gently unfinished, their mind may keep returning to it. Not because you created drama, not because you played a cruel game, but because their mind cannot fully archive what still feels open. That open thread may reappear while they are at work, driving, making dinner, or lying down at night just before sleep. The conversation can continue in the background of their thoughts, even when you are doing nothing at all. There is a psychological term connected to this pattern, the Zeigarnik effect. The name comes from a psychologist who noticed something unusual in a restaurant. You can picture a busy tea garden in Turkey, or a crowded local restaurant where servers are moving quickly from table to table. The servers could remember unpaid orders with extraordinary precision. They knew which table had ordered what, who had drunk how many teas, and who had eaten which dish. But the moment a customer paid the bill and walked away, the details often disappeared from the server's memory. That observation later led to many experiments and a powerful conclusion. Unfinished tasks tend to remain more active in memory than tasks that have already been completed. So if you want to remain present in someone's mind, the goal is not to conquer every uncertainty and resolve every possible question. The goal is not to make them feel anxious, confused, or emotionally off balance. The goal is simply to avoid giving every interaction such perfect closure that their mind has no reason to return to you. When every conversation ends in a satisfying, airtight conclusion, you may be unintentionally giving their brain permission to stop thinking about you. But when a conversation is left gently open through authentic curiosity, an unfinished mental task can remain. And unfinished tasks do not simply gather dust in the back rooms of the mind. They rise back to the surface. They return when the person is alone. They return when something reminds them of you. They return when their brain wants to make sense of the missing piece. If you are beginning to understand why some people suddenly feel distant, while others seem impossible to forget, let this land for a moment. The mistake many people make is surprisingly simple. They rely on closed questions. How was your day? Fine. Busy. And the conversation is over. Was the movie good? Yeah, it was okay. That topic is now finished too. There is nothing wrong with asking these questions. They do not make you boring or unworthy. But they create an endpoint. They give the brain a clean conclusion, and the mental file closes. Every time a conversation file closes, the space you occupy in someone's mind can become smaller. The good news is that the same mechanism can work in the opposite direction. Just as closed questions can end a conversation, the right kind of open thread can create a sense of continued interest. But this is important. Not every open question creates that effect. The kind of question we are talking about is not one they can immediately answer and forget. It is something that makes their mind feel there is still something to discover, something they will need to come back to you to understand. And before we go any further, there is a line we should never cross. The purpose is never to create anxiety. Messages like, "We need to talk," can put someone into defense mode. They can trigger stress, fear, and uncertainty. Instead of bringing a person closer, that kind of message can make them pull away. Real curiosity is different. Real curiosity activates anticipation. It can create the small, pleasant excitement you feel when you are waiting for a message from someone you care about, or when you are about to open a gift. Anxiety says, something is wrong. Curiosity says, there is something I want to know. That is the feeling you want to create, not fear, not panic, not destructive uncertainty, but the sense that there is more to learn about you and more to understand between you. Write curiosity in the comments if you feel the difference. The question you use does not need to be romantic. In fact, it should not feel like a test. Do not ask something heavy like, "What do you feel about me?" Do not pressure them into defining the relationship. Do not make them feel as if they are being examined or forced into an emotional corner. The strongest questions often sound light, ordinary, and almost casual. But beneath that simplicity, they create an unfinished mental puzzle. You are giving their minds something to work with, while choosing not to reveal the entire answer immediately. This is not about memorizing a line and using it mechanically. It helps to understand what is happening beneath the surface. When you ask a meaningful question, you create what cognitive psychology might describe as an active file. The mind holds that file open until it has enough information to close it. The problem is that many questions asked in early attraction are answered instantly. The answer arrives, the file closes, and the interaction leaves little trace. Your intention is different. You open a file through something natural and sincere. Then, without manipulation and without artificial mystery, you allow a little time to exist before the file is fully closed. Here are 3 ways this can look in real life. First, the question you save for later. You might say, "There's something I've wanted to ask you for a while, but I think it would be better to talk about it in person, or when we both have a calmer moment." Notice what is happening here. You are not pretending. You may genuinely have something you want to ask. You are simply choosing a better setting for it. Their mind receives 2 pieces of information at once. There is something related to me that she wants to ask, and I cannot know what it is right now. That combination can naturally create an open loop. Second, the unfinished observation. You could say, "It's interesting. Something you said the other day made me notice something about you that I honestly didn't expect. I'll tell you later." This one can be especially powerful because you are not merely promising a question. You are hinting that you have seen something in them, and almost everyone wonders what people they value are thinking about them in the background. When you say that something they said helped you notice an unexpected quality in them, their curiosity may become stronger. Third, the time-bound question. You could write, "I have a really interesting question for you, but I'm saving it for our next conversation." It's not something I want to ask through a quick message. This can work especially well if most of your connection happens through texting. It subtly tells them that the next conversation matters. It gives the next interaction more weight because there is now something waiting inside it. Do you see what all three examples have in common? First, you give their mind a real task. They begin to think, she knows something about me, or she noticed something, or she wants to ask me something. Second, you do not allow that task to be resolved immediately, but you do not do it in a cold, forced, or theatrical way. You do not manufacture fake mystery. You create a real opening, delay the closure naturally, and avoid the feeling of manipulation. That is where this principle becomes powerful. Take a moment now and think about the person on your mind. Open the Notes app on your phone if you need to, or simply think quietly to yourself. What is one real question you would genuinely like to ask them? What is one detail you noticed about them? What is something they told you that stayed with you? Do not send it yet. Just identify it. Make sure it is real. Make sure it comes from something you honestly want to understand, not from panic or the need to get an immediate reply. As you think about it, notice the shift inside you. You are no longer trapped in the anxious question, what can I say so they will respond? Instead, you are reconnecting with your own natural curiosity. Right, I feel it in the comments when your question becomes clear. There is another psychological system that can make this process even more interesting, the reticular activating system. This is a network of neurons located in the brainstem. It helps filter the thousands of sounds, faces, images, and pieces of information we encounter throughout the day. Most of what happens around us never reaches our conscious attention. The brain decides it is irrelevant and lets it pass. But unresolved, incomplete, and unanswered things can become more noticeable to this filtering system. Think about the moment you decide you want a red car. The next day, you walk outside and it feels as though the whole city is suddenly full of red cars. Of course, thousands of new red cars did not appear overnight. Your reticular activating system simply marked red cars as important. It began showing you what had always been there, but what you had previously ignored. Something similar can happen when you leave a sincere question unresolved. Your name, your face, and your last conversation may become linked to an unfinished mental file. Then, in places where they would normally not have noticed you, reminders can begin to stand out. They might see your name somewhere and pause. A song may play on the radio that reminds them of a phrase you once said, even if the song has nothing to do with you. They may notice a place you visited together, a color you often wear, or some small object connected to a past conversation. It is not magic. There may be an energetic dimension to connection that can be explored in another context, but what is being described here is also a biological process of attention and association, and this is where it becomes even more fascinating. Once the reticular activating system has marked something as important, another process can enter the picture: confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is the tendency of the mind to look for evidence that supports what it is already thinking about, while overlooking information that does not fit. Once their mind opens the file, she has something she has not told me, or she noticed something about me. Future details may be pulled into that file. You post an ordinary story on social media, and it may not be seen as just an ordinary post. Their mind might quietly ask, is that connected to what she was going to tell me? You send a simple message about something unrelated, and part of their attention may still scan between the lines, looking for the answer they are expecting. Even if you become quiet for a few days, their mind may not automatically interpret it as lack of interest. It may wonder whether you are simply waiting for the right moment to say the thing you hinted at. This is what separates a meaningful open thread from a one-time texting trick. It can become like a snowball rolling down a mountain. You open the file once, with sincerity. After that, their own mind may continue doing some of the work. And while that happens, you do not need to chase. You keep living your life. You remain calm. You do not spend every hour explaining yourself, justifying yourself, or trying to force a reaction. Think about the people you could not stop thinking about in your own life. They were not always unforgettable because they did something extraordinary. Sometimes they remained in your thoughts because, at some point, they left an open file in your mind. Then, your own confirmation bias took over and kept feeding that file with details, memories, and meanings. Now let's build this in a way you can use today. There are 4 steps. Follow them in this exact order, because each step has a specific psychological function. Step 1. The personal hook. Begin with something they previously told you that mattered to them. It could be a childhood memory. It could be a problem at work. It could be something about their family. It could be a trip they took or a decision they were struggling with. The important thing is that it should be about them, not about you. This matters because it keeps your question from sounding like a strategy. It makes it feel natural, attentive, and grounded in genuine care. For example, you could say, "I've been thinking about what you told me the other day about that situation at work." Step 2. Ask a real and specific question. Do not ask something vague or generic. Choose a detail that shows you truly listened. The stronger and more specific the detail is, the more meaningful the question can feel. It proves that you were not just waiting for your turn to speak. You were actually present with them. You could ask, "What did you finally decide to do about the project you were unsure about?" Or, "How did that meeting go? The one that was making you so stressed that day?" Step 3. Leave a gentle opening. After they answer, do not shut the entire topic down immediately. But do not abruptly cut them off or make them worry. Simply leave one more layer to be discovered. You might say, "I understand. There's actually a really interesting reason I ask you that, but I'll tell you later." Or, "What you just said reminded me of something very similar that happened to me. I'll tell you the full story sometime." This creates a pause without creating emotional pressure. Step 4. Calibrate your tone and energy. This is the step that determines whether it feels natural or artificial. Say everything lightly, casually, as if you were talking about something ordinary while walking down the street or finishing a coffee. Do not create intense mystery. Do not add dramatic silences. Do not turn it into a soap opera. Speak like a woman with her own life, her own rhythm, and no desperate need to explain every thought the moment it appears. That relaxed energy makes the curiosity feel real rather than manipulative. Look at what you have built through these 4 steps. You remembered a detail from their life which made them feel seen. You asked a thoughtful question that only someone who had truly listened could ask. Then, you opened a window of curiosity around yourself without pressure, without emotional games, and without begging for their attention. But what happens if they insist? What if they say, "Come on, tell me now. What is it? Just say it." Do not panic. Do not immediately give in and pour everything out just because they pressed you. Stay warm, playful, and relaxed. You can say, "Oh, it's really not that urgent. I'll tell you later." And then move on with a smile. Their insistence is often a sign that the open loop is working. Their mind wants to close the file. It wants the missing piece. You do not need to become cold to keep that space open. You simply extend it gently, with kindness, and let the curiosity settle a little deeper. Now pause for a moment. Think of the specific detail they told you. Decide on the exact question you will ask. Choose the sentence you will use afterward to leave the conversation open. Then, imagine yourself saying it in a light, relaxed tone, as though it naturally came up in conversation. Do not rush this. A few seconds of mental rehearsal can change the way you show up in the real interaction. Say it once in your mind, from beginning to end. Feel whether it sounds natural in your voice. The energy you carry into the conversation matters as much as the sentence itself. Write "found it" in the comments if you have your hook, question, and open ending. But before you use this, there is a deeper truth you need to understand. No technique works well when it is carried by the wrong energy. The purpose is not to deceive anyone. It is not to seize control of another person's mind. It is not to turn connection into a competition where one person has power and the other person chases. The purpose is to return you to the version of yourself who is calm, present, sincerely curious, and deeply rooted in her own center. If you can, Close your eyes for a moment and take one slow breath. Picture the version of you who does not have to chase anyone to be loved. The version of you whose quiet presence already carries value. Imagine that nothing is urgent. Imagine that a message does not have to receive an immediate reply. Imagine that every silence does not have to become a disaster story in your mind. Let yourself release the need to control the process. Let yourself trust that what belongs in your life can find its way to you in its own time. Repeat this quietly, or out loud if it feels natural. I trust the natural timing of life and events. I do not have to chase what is already meant for me. My presence is enough. My curiosity is sincere, and my calm is one of my greatest strengths. What is good for me can find its way to me without me begging for it. Whatever your beliefs may be, you can direct this intention toward the flow of life, divine order, the universe, or the Creator. This is not a demand, it is an intention. If this person is good for me, may a sincere curiosity awaken within them to return to me. May they remember what they felt. May the things we left unfinished echo gently in their mind. May they notice that they keep thinking of me. But if this person is not good for me, may they leave my life peacefully, and may I move forward into a more beautiful chapter of my story. Feel yourself stepping out of scarcity. You are no longer begging anyone for attention. You are adjusting your energy, your standards, your presence, and your boundaries in relationships. From this feeling of fullness, every question you ask and every message you send will carry a different weight. Because you are no longer communicating from emptiness, you are communicating from wholeness. Stay there for a breath. Let go of when they will reply, what they will decide, and every outcome you cannot control. Place those things into the open space of life. Your job is not to obsess over the result. Your job is to stay connected to your grace, your genuine curiosity, and your calm. And now say this clearly to yourself. I do not need anyone to think about me in order to know that I am valuable. My worth is not determined by their attention, their message, or their silence. I listen to another person not to take something from them, but because I value them as a human being. I use these tools not from lack, but from self-compassion and the desire for a real connection. And if the person in front of me cannot recognize the value that is right before them, someone else will be able to see it clearly. Remember this, especially during those vulnerable moments when you keep checking your phone every 5 minutes, waiting for a message. This kind of approach does not work through desperation. It works best when you are standing in the center of your own life, interested in life, connected to yourself, and no longer willing to abandon your dignity for a response. Even when it is not spoken aloud, the difference in energy can be felt. If you stayed to the end, you are not the same woman who began this video wondering, where am I going wrong? You now understand that the issue was never your value. The issue was that no one explained how human attention can work. You now know how to create interest with honesty, without collapsing into desperation, and without sacrificing your self-respect. If this changed the way you see your next conversation, write self-worth in the comments. And remember, the point is never to force someone to notice you, or to fight for their attention as though it were scarce. The real work is becoming someone who is difficult to forget, not through one clever sentence, not through one isolated tactic, but through the person you become, again and again, someone who listens with genuine curiosity, asks sincere questions, leaves space without fear, and carries an unshakable trust in her own worth. Take good care of yourself.